Greetings and salutations, everybody out there. So, this is Dad, and I'm continuing with Dad. Tell me your story. And today I am going to finish up the section with your siblings. And take my little bookmark off. And I don't know if I've ever done this, but at the top of each page is a little quote. You can see that there. Um, and this last page, there's like a quote from an author or whatever, and it says, "The advantage of growing up with siblings is that you become very good at fractions." Right? I mean, we're going to divide everything in thirds, right, or halves, or whatever. So then the previous one, which I didn't read, was siblings know how to push each other's buttons, but they also know how to mend things faster than anyone. So yes, in my life, I have had great arguments and fights with my sisters, and I certainly know how to push their buttons. But we love each other and we're great friends. And so, yeah, I would not trade anything in the world for my sisters, or having sisters is the greatest thing in the world. You know what I meant. Okay, so here we go. More memories in no particular order. This is just stuff that I thought about. So the first thing was Easter eggs and baskets, finding eggs. So I mean, I don't know if kids still do it today. Maybe they do. But growing up, my parents would hide our Easter baskets. And so you'd get an Easter basket and it would have all kinds of candy and maybe a little gift or something in there, and they'd hide it. Well, in a house, there's only so many places you can hide an Easter basket, but still, um, they would hide them, and you'd run around the house, and maybe you'd look in the washing machine or the dryer or in a closet underneath some boxes or whatever. So we always had a lot of fun looking for and getting our Easter baskets. And my parents, we would also dye Easter eggs. Right? Man, I know everybody still does that, and you'd get the vinegar and the little tablets, and you spend all the time dyeing them. Well, after we dyed them, my parents, after we went to bed, excuse me, got a little bit of a cold, so I got this tickle. My parents would hide the Easter eggs. And they never kept track of exactly how many eggs they hid, and they never kept track of how many we found. So it would be inevitable that a few months after Easter, we would find an Easter egg one time. And I remember pulling an Easter egg out of, we had a drawer in the kitchen where you'd keep little sandwich baggies, and inside that little box where all the sandwich baggies was, somebody had hid an Easter egg, and we never found it, but we wind up finding it months later. So that was always a really fun memory with me and my sisters, Easter time, and finding our baskets and stuff. Making ramps and jumping over each other with our bikes. So you've probably seen memes on Facebook or Instagram or whatever of kids in the 70s, living like a wild banshee and, total disregard for safety. And we would find, like, if somebody found an old door, or we would, planks of wood, and we'd get cinder blocks, and we would make ramps and jump over the ramps, or jump the ramps with our bikes. No helmets, no safety gear. I'm lucky to be alive. And I know that my sister Anne Marie is lucky to be alive, because while Tammy may not have done a lot of the jumping on bikes, Anne Marie certainly did it with me, with all the other neighborhood kids. So I remember one time we built a ramp in front of our house right next door to the neighbors, and you'd come flying down the hill on the sidewalk and hit this ramp and go flying. And of course, people, other neighborhood kids would say, "Oh, jump us, jump us." So they would lay down on the ground and put their arms like this, and you'd get 4 or 5 people to see if you could jump over them. Well, we made sure that we would clear them, right? We weren't going to just do it blindly and hit the person with our bike laying on the ground. So it was more just for dramatic effect, being able to jump kids. But that was certainly fun, and I know Anne Marie and I enjoyed it. Sleigh riding in the Spurgeon's backyard. What fun. So yes, in the wintertime, we had a neighbor, Dr. Spurgeon. He lived up around the corner, and his backyard, there was a really, really steep hill. I don't know exactly how steep it was, but back in the day it was steep, and when it snowed, everybody from the neighborhood would show up there and go sleigh riding. and what fond memories we would have of bringing up the saucer sleds or the toboggans, or heck, you could even get a piece of cardboard and make a sled. We were very crafty and resourceful, and we would build sleds or make sleds out of just whatever. And we could spend the entire day on a Saturday or Sunday sleigh riding. And of course, if it was a snow day and we didn't have school, oh, forget about it. Me, Tammy, and Anne Marie would spend the entire day out there in ski jackets and long sleigh riding pants and stuff like that, and we would just have a ball. Really, really great childhood sleigh riding. Winter, heating the house with wood and standing in front of the stove. So the house that I grew up in Newton, yeah, during the early '70s, during the oil embargo, OPEC, and oil and all that stuff. My father is like, hey, we are going to start heating our house with wood because oil is very expensive. And there was a chimney in the house, and he, put a brick facade all around this area and built up the floor with slate and stuff like that, and got it's called a Vermont Castings stove. So it's a cast iron stove, and he put it in this section of we'll call it the family room, and you know, from the time I was a little kid, forever, we heated the house with wood. And the house itself, I think my dad would maybe set the thermostat to, let's say, 55 degrees. Warm enough that the pipes would not freeze, but basically we never burned oil. We would only burn oil in emergencies because the house was heated with wood. So the house was always cold. You had electric mattress pads on your bed so you could sleep in nice warmth, but in the morning you'd get out of bed and get dressed quickly because it was freezing in that house. And me, Tammy, and Anne Marie, the three of us, now I'm going to have to stand up, hopefully you can see me, pretend that there is a wood stove against this wall. And the three of us would stand up against the stove, and we'd kind of like put our hands behind us. And it'd be Tammy and me and Anne Marie, and the three of us would stand in front of this stove for hours on end. And my parents would be sitting in their chairs, we chit chat or whatever. But we were constantly standing in front of the stove because you'd get warm, and then your jeans would get really, really hot, and like, oh, when you moved a little bit, your jeans were so warm, and then 2 minutes later, they were cold again, and then you'd go back and stand in front of the stove. And it was funny, even after we were all married and we had moved away, and before my parents moved to South Carolina, whenever we went back to the house, the stove wouldn't even be running. They wouldn't even be running a fire. And we would stand there with our hands behind our back out of just sheer habit. And I'm sure if you ask Tammy or Anne Marie, they'll go, yeah, out of sheer habit, we would just stand in front of the stove just because that's what we did. So that was pretty funny. Summer fun and coming home when the street lights went on. Yeah, I don't know if kids today would say that they have the same memories, but my summers growing up, my parents had no idea where I was half the time. We would get up on a summer morning, no school, have breakfast, and my mom would be like, well, you're not staying in the house watching TV all day, get out. So we would just go with our friends or our siblings, me and Anne Marie and Tammy, and we would disappear for the entire day. Maybe we'd come home for lunch and then disappear again, and then come home for dinner and then disappear again. And we would do that, and you were expected home when the street lights came on. And it was just wonderful. It was a time of innocent childhood and growing up without a care in the world. And I'm sure my sisters would say the same thing. Oh my God, firecrackers and making bombs. I'm lucky I'm still alive, let me tell you. So we had these neighbors down the street, and I won't use their name, but they had like 5 or 6 kids, and they had kids that were our age and some that were older. But they used to order fireworks from a company in, I don't know, Minnesota or the Dakotas or whatever, and their parents would just let them. They would let them order fireworks, which were illegal. So firecrackers and bottle rockets and Roman candles and all these fireworks, and they would order them, and we would play with, like, literally be playing with fireworks, blowing stuff up, put them inside a GI Joe and blow up a GI Joe. Occasional frog every once in a while, if you found a frog, blow it up. And after a while, just playing with regular firecrackers wasn't enough. You had to take it to the next level. So I don't know if it was who it was specifically, but somebody came up with the right idea. Well, what if we took firecrackers apart and we made them more powerful? Basically, we make a bomb. So I took a block of wood and I would drill a big hole in the block of wood. And Anne Marie would be right there with me, doing it with me, because not Tammy, but usually Anne Marie. So I drill this hole in the wood, and then we would take a couple of packs of firecrackers and open them up. They're just made out of paper, and it's black powder, or black powder or gunpowder, black powder, wrapped in paper. So you take it all apart and you take the fuse out, and you would take all of the black powder and stuff it in this hole. And then you would take one, like maybe like a little lady finger, or maybe even one firecracker, and you would stick it in so it just came up to the top of the hole. And maybe you'd kind of wind up a couple of fuses that you took out from other firecrackers to make a really long fuse. And if one or two packs of firecrackers wasn't enough gunpowder or black powder, I would raid my dad's gun cabinet and take a shotgun shell and cut open a shotgun shell and take out the black powder from the shotgun shell and make up the difference. And I would pack that hole with the combination of black powder and gunpowder, and then I would seal it all up with like candle wax. I would melt a candle and melt it into a pile and keep it pliable, and then pack the wax all across the top of the wood to seal it up. So there's the bomb. And I would make these all the time. And we would do everything from, dig a hole and drop it down into a hole and light it and drop it down and have it blow up. We would put it inside a coffee can, put it inside a garbage can. We did all kinds of stuff. Even one time, we tied this bomb to a rock. And I had waterproof fuse that I used to use with my model rockets. And I would use that fuse to go down inside where the gunpowder was, and of course with all the wax. So I was pretty confident that the waterproof fuse would burn and it would ignite the gunpowder even if it were underwater. So I made this bomb, tied a rock to it, lit it, threw it into a quarry up on the edge of Newton. We would ride up there on our bikes, and you'd see this thing go, and all of a sudden you'd hear boom, boom, and you'd hear the explosion, and this big bubble would come up. So I say that I'm lucky to be alive because I'm lucky I never blew my hand off or killed myself making bombs growing up, and of course that was something that Anne Marie and I would do. Growing up together and just learning how to be silly. So my sisters are both kind of extroverts, insofar as they're very sociable, they're very fun, they're fun to be around. I kind of feed off them. I can be the quietest person in the room. I can also be a lot of fun. I don't even have to have alcohol. I can just be silly. But when Tammy and Anne Marie and we all get together, I'd have to say the three of us, because we grew up as siblings, because we always learned how to entertain each other and be fun together, when the three of us to get together, we can be quite the riot. So maybe you watch this video before my sisters and I get together at the next holiday. Thanksgiving is coming up. And you'll see just how silly and stupid the three of us can be. And it's a reflection on the great childhood that we had together growing up together. So the last story, and this has nothing to do with my sisters, but it's what do we have? 14 minutes. Okay, I have time for one last story. This is the St. Vitus dance hunting story. I don't know if I've ever told you this, but so I started hunting when I was 12 years old. My dad taught me how to hunt, squirrels and rabbits, and then we moved up to deer hunting. So I think I was 13 years old when I went, 12 or 13 when I went deer hunting for the first time. And my dad we'd go out together, and we'd walk into the woods or where we were going to hunt, and he would point to a tree and say, "Okay, sit there and don't move until I come get you." So no lawn chair, no chair, just stand up against the tree and wait for a deer to come. And I did have kind of a pad that I could sit on, so I could sit on the ground and not freeze. But you know, it's November, it's cold, I'm cold, my feet are cold, my body's cold. And so what do you do when you're cold? You kind of, well, you got to get the full effect here. So I'd be standing there and I'd be doing this and jumping up and down and maybe, kind of doing this and jumping in place. Maybe I would do all of these things to kind of stay warm. And the key to deer hunting is, one, be quiet, and two, be still, because deer are very good at detecting movement. So you want to be as still as possible. And so me jumping around trying to keep warm was the complete opposite of being still. I'm sitting there and I'm doing all of my movements to try and stay warm. Unbeknownst to me, there was a hunter who was farther down on the edge of this field where I was hunting. I could see me. And I didn't see him, but he could see me. And he wound up leaving his spot and going to walk and stand someplace else. So he's walking down this path or this road in the woods. And he comes across my father. And my father's like, "Hey, well, how you doing?" He's like, "Okay, I'm never going to get a deer over where I was standing." He goes, "Why?" He goes, "Oh, there's some young kid doing the St. Vitus dance over there." Now, I have no idea what the St. Vitus dance is, but it has become a running joke between me and my father for 40 years that every time I talk about the St. Vitus dance and me jumping around trying to keep warm while hunting, my father will still get a chuckle out of it. So I just wanted to share that story if I've never shared that with you before. So we are now, thankfully, at the end of Siblings. And I have to say, if I got together with my sisters and we just started reminiscing about our childhood, I'm sure that there are millions of stories that I have forgotten about. And they would probably say, "Oh, remember the time we did this, or remember the time that we did that." So what I've just shared with you is but a fraction of the wonderful memories that I've had growing up with my sisters. Maybe later on in the book, there'll be something that I can remember and I'll add it in there. But other than that, so now I'll give you a little anticipation of what we're going to talk about next. We're going to talk about becoming and being a dad. So this will be the time in my life when I first learned that I was going to be a dad and what that was all about. And of course, Julianne being my firstborn, I'll talk about her, and then Michael, and then being a stepdad, right? Because I'm a stepdad to Erica and Mark, and then of course being a dad again with Faith being my last one. So everything dad related, we are going to go and talk about next. And boy, my gosh, there's 1, 2, let me see, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pages of being a dad. So I'm sure that there's tons of questions that I can dive into. So with that, thank you for watching this video. As the kids say, like and subscribe, and I will talk to you again soon. All right, take care. Bye.